Hi there, and a very warm welcome to Season 4, Episode 24 of People Soup. It's Ross McIntosh here. Pea Soupers this week, it's a short cup of soup, and we're going experimental with an episode called The Greasy Pole. I was reflecting on the approach of Rich and Joe last week to self-esteem, and my mind went back to an interview I had whilst I was still in the civil service, about, I guess over 10 years ago. And it was for a senior role in HR, and it was, without a doubt, the worst interview I've ever had. Cringeworthy, terrifying, embarrassing, and humiliating are just some of the words I might use to describe it. I'll tell you more about it in just a moment. People Soup is an award-winning podcast where we share evidence-based behavioural science in a way that's practical, accessible, and fun to nourish your mind to flourish at work. And this episode is recorded in my wonderful office in Gines, near beautiful Seville in Spain. Let's take a quick scoot over to the news desk, for reviews are in for the second part of my chat with Rich and Joe, where we unpacked self-esteem. Over on Instagram, Gillian Donahoe said, "Yes, I loved hearing this second episode. It's well worth waiting for. I love the way the conversation flows. Each of them, you, bringing personal viewpoints and stories that connect with us all. If only we could converse like this in the pub." And a special thanks also to Kevin Simpson for his kind words and advice over on Twitter. And a huge thanks to everyone who listened, shared, and reviewed. Your support is very much appreciated. For now, get a brew on and have a listen to me reflecting on the worst interview of my life. So Pea Soupers, why the hell am I sharing this with you? When actually I'd much rather just keep avoiding this memory. Well, I'm sharing it for 3 reasons. It might resonate with some of you. You might be willing to share your worst interview experience with me and the Pea Soupers. And in the next episode, I'll share how I can usefully reflect upon that interview using a tool called the ACT Matrix to help me sort my experience and learn for the future. So, picture the scene. Me waiting to be called into the interview room. I'm in my best suit, my lucky tie, polished shoes, and feeling awful. I've already been for a pee 6 times in the last 40 minutes. My mouth is as dry as the Sahara, and I've got a bit of a sweat on. The interview was for a promotion in HR to a more senior leadership role with responsibility for a larger team, budgets, and all that shenanigans. In my preparation, I hadn't considered why I was applying. It was kind of just the done thing, to climb the greasy pole. It was expected by colleagues, friends, family, and me. The natural next step. I honestly hadn't paused to consider why. I'd been fortunate enough to have a promotion every few years in my career in the civil service, and I'd been rewarded by a more highfalutin title, more money, and more kudos. Looking back, I notice I was very solitary in my preparation. I didn't ask anyone for help. Some people had told me they could already see me in the role, and I kind of believed them. I'd prepared my presentation to the nanosecond, revised my competency examples over and over and over again. So, I was called into the room by my then boss, and there were 2 others in the room, a director and a director general. That 1 hour passed very quickly, in a blur, in a dreamlike state, and I can't remember that much. And it was over 10 years ago. But like I say, it was all one disastrous blur. Do you ever have that feeling where you can observe the horror with each question, watching the interviewers trying to remain encouraging and sensing their discomfort with the absolute shambles that was unfolding before their eyes? Noticing them asking me very, very supportive follow-up questions, intended to allow me to build upon my responses and shine. Yet, dear listener, shine I did not. So, once I'd left the room, I was wringing wet. I drank the whole carafe of water and I phoned Manel to try and articulate how badly it had gone. The next day, my boss called me into a room and shared the inevitable news that I'd been unsuccessful. I really felt for her because she didn't really know how to start unpacking my feedback. I remember her just shaking her head in a bemused manner. And over the next few days, the 2 other panel members contacted me. They wanted to give me feedback and help me reflect. And dear listener, I was Jason Bourne-like in my vigilance to avoid them and their pesky feedback. If there had been a fridge, I would have gladly sought refuge in it. My avoidance continued as I remained firmly in my despondency and my fixed mindset. As the kids would say, I was shooketh, mighty shooketh. So let's press pause, folks. That's just some of the features of my worst interview. Why am I sharing this? Well, partly because it's one thing that I'm most certainly an expert in, and that's being me. And there's some curiosity here too. I wonder if you might be moved to share your worst interview experience. You can do this via email at peoplesoup.pod@gmail.com, or you could drop me a WhatsApp recorded message at 0044 7771 85118. And all these details are in the show notes at rossmcintosh.co.uk. So what I'll do next week is hopefully share some of your worst interview experiences, and I'll also use a tool called the ACT Matrix to help me reflect and learn from that experience. This is an experiment, P-Supers, I'm hoping that some of you might share. It will help normalise the fact that interviews don't always go to plan, and I can always read out your experience or play your recording without revealing your name, or you could even give me a pseudonym if you wish. That's it, folks. Our experimental Greasy Pole is in the bag. If you like this episode or the podcast, could I invite you to share it with one other person? I'm really keen to spread the behavioural science and skills with more people. Of course, a subscription, follow, rating or review are also very much appreciated. And reviews are marvellous. I could really do with a whole lot more to help us reach more people. Could you help me out? I'd be really grateful. The show notes are at rossmcintosh.co.uk. And this includes links to a few different platforms. Listeners, I love to hear from you, and you can get in touch at peoplesoup.pod@gmail.com. On Twitter, we're at peoplesouppod. On the Instagram, we're at people.soup. And on Facebook, we're at peoplesouppod. Thanks to Andy Glenn for his spoon magic and Alex Engelberg for his vocals. And most of all, dear listener, thanks to you. If there had been a fridge, I would have gladly sought refuge in it.
Come on. I'm actually being pushed and shoved at the moment as well by one of the mines. Well. Mr. Johnson, while you have 5 minutes, you're live on Good Morning. Could you talk to Piers and Susanna for me?
I'll be with you in a second.
Yeah, I have an earpiece here in my hand, ready to go. Right, he's been taken inside, into the freezer.
He's gone into the fridge.
There's a bunker.